Hey there YouTube, I'm Yukitsu, this is Yukitsu Times, welcome to my channel, welcome back to a little bit of Battlefleet Gothic Armada 2. So today I want to talk a little bit about the Necrons and some more advanced tactics that you can do with them for later on once you've got all their skills unlocked, and we'll ignore the fact that I haven't actually got all of the upgrades unlocked. One of the things is that I've been allowed for some reason to use the arc propagators, but if I go into the match, I'm allowed to select my skills and upgrades, which is a pretty interesting thing, but it doesn't let me pick mass recall in that screen, and it does let me pick arc propagator, so I think someone in there switched a value. But regardless, let's talk a little bit about the new skills that you gain access to. First of all, let's talk a little bit about Resurrection Orb, though. The Resurrection Orb is quite a decent ability for the Necrons in the sense that now if I know I'm up against, say, the Space Marines, I can select the Resurrection Orb on that screen. So this makes it much, much more viable than it used to be. I still think that I'm going to use against the Space Marines the Mass Recall and the Pyramidal Reconstruction, but it is another option and it does make it a little bit more viable. Next up, Stasis Bomb. This is something that you're going to unlock. Useful. It's a powerful ability in any faction under any circumstance. You're able to do a lot of different weird things with it. It's not necessarily the best ability for any faction, but it's always a good staple and it's always a good reliable one to have on hand. Next up, Scarab Swarm. Enemy ships within 4,500 unit radius around the ship suffer 10 damage per second, ignoring armor. This is actually quite a decent amount of damage. But the more important thing is that you're also regaining a hull while you're doing it, and it's a very large, reliable area of effectability. It's not too difficult to keep this in range of a bunch of enemy ships there, dealing a huge amount of damage to all of them. Well, not huge, but a decent amount of damage to all of them, while simultaneously regrowing a bit of your hull back on all of your ships as they're in a brawl. This is the probably best brawler one, but you're only going to want to use this with the Necrons in situations where you're not going to have mass recall for the extra mobility, and you're only going to use this one in instances where you really have to get on top of your opponent with relative ease without having to use that mass recall, and you're capable of then actually winning in the brawl. If you're up against, say, the Imperial Navy, you might actually lose even if you're using the Scarab Swarm, so probably not the best choice against those sorts of factions. Next up is the Lightning Link. This one creates a line between your capital ship and any other ship in your fleet, and it deals a ton of damage. The only problem is that it's actually fairly fiddly to use this. I think that if you're capable of using this and you're capable of getting multiple ships in a row with it, or even just focusing down one ship, it's quite powerful. If you're able to consistently get results from it, then this is very, very good. If you can't get consistent results from this one, then it's not it's pretty weak in that instance there, and you're going to have to sink a lot of micro in it. You're going to have to sink a lot of attention on your admiral. He's going to be in a situation where he's very visible and is probably going to get killed because of it. It's a difficult ability to use that is high risk, high reward sort of thing. I think that if you're capable, especially of getting like multiple ships in a single lightning link, then that's going to be when it's really shining, because it's just very, very powerful if you're capable of getting that. Next up is Mass Recall, and this just changes the way that Necrons play. You're capable of doing all sorts of interesting and nonsense sort of things with it. We're going to sort of showcase it pretty heavily with the fleet composition that we're going to be going with here, but it does depend a little bit on what matchups you're in as well. Next up, we got our upgrades here. One of the things to comment is that the Shards of Nyadrazatha has changed a bit in the sense of they've reworked boarding and fires. Fires now cap out at 10 fires instead of 4 fires, which makes it a little bit more reliable. The way it worked before was if you managed to get like a couple fires lit on an enemy ship because of weapons fire or something like that, and then you also got Shards of Nyadrazatha on that ship there, you wouldn't actually deal very much fire damage from the ability because they already had fires on board, and you'd cap out at the 4. Now that it caps out at 10, that's pretty much impossible for it to happen. And also the fires trickle onto the ship instead of all coming in at once, which means that even if they get sort of the maximum number of fires from your ship from the boarding actions, you're still going to be able to cause all of the fire damage because some of them are going to die off having completed their whole damage value and then been replaced by another one since they're slowly trickling in. It makes it a lot more reliable to get a lot of damage out of the Shards of Nyadrazatha, and it's almost actually broken the way that it can work under some circumstances just because the morale break from fires in this game is a little bit high. Next up, we got the Nightmare Shroud. While on reload stance, the ship inflicts 3 morale loss per second to every enemy ship within its identification range. This was completely useless before just because you never knew when you were going to end up against, say, the Tyranids, or you were going to end up against a Space Marine player, both of which have immunity to morale loss. or even a Tau mercenary fleet with immunity to morale loss. So if you're in any of those situations, obviously the Nightmare Shroud is going to be completely worthless. But if you find yourself in a situation where you're not up against those, you can now select to not have this, or you can select to have this as appropriate, making it a bit better than it was before. Still relies on your Admiral getting into the fight there, and 3 morale loss per second is actually quite low, so it's not necessarily a great ability, but it's one that you can definitely use now. Living Metal Substructure, escort ships health points plus 25%. Necron escorts aren't actually strong enough for me to really recommend this. They are quite fragile, and upping their hit points doesn't really stop them from being fairly fragile. They're still pretty easy to kill. It does let them last a decent amount of time, but they're not going to be dealing very much damage or doing very much during that time period there, so it's a bit tricky to make a large escort fleet with the Necrons. Eldritch Bridge, lightning strike range plus 4,500 units, applies to ships with portals. Basically, this makes it so that you can sort of kite against enemies a little bit more effectively in certain circumstances. I don't particularly like this just because the dynamic of when you would lightning strike kind of messes with this a little bit. Let's say I'm against the Eldar Corsairs when I'd want to be chasing them down and lightning striking them. Well, their holofields blocks lightning strikes, so I can't actually use that longer range one to catch them anyway, so it doesn't work there. And if I try to use it against, say, orcs, to try and kite against them and use lightning strikes against them while I'm running away, well, I have to get their shields down first. By the time I've actually got their shields down with my weapons fire, they've probably actually gotten into range where I could have lightning strike them normally, and because of that, Eldritch Bridge is just kind of useless there in that sort of sense. It's got some potential fringe cases, but it's not an ability that I think is really fitting for the Necrons. Next up, you get the Structural Analyzer. This is the one that I would say encourages me to take escorts. If I was going to take a more heavy amount of escorts, this is what I would take it with. Increases lightning arc's critical chances by 100% against enemy ships, which is marked using the scanner skill. So this is a fantastic way to pile on more criticals, something that the Necrons are traditionally pretty bad at since they don't have the lock-on target ability or anything of that nature. It makes it so that they can actually get a fairly decent amount of crits out against an opponent there. Not necessarily the most powerful ability. It really does just replace the ability to get that from a stance, which is what every other faction does. And they have to also use scanner ability, which is on a duration, so it's a much, much weaker version of that sort of style of thing. But it's still there if you really want to go for those criticals, and there are situations where that is extremely useful. Lastly, you get the Arc Propagator. I've been using it, so I sort of know a little bit about it, but it basically just makes it so that your lightning, your particle whip sort of chains from one target to the other, which is kind of useful. If you're up against a large swarm of escorts, that's when you would really want to have something like that. I think it's actually a fairly weak ability, though, under a lot of circumstances, so it's not one that I really advocate for. Anyway, let's go ahead and take a look at our fleet here. Now, this is a fleet that is kind of a cheese one, and it does not work against certain compositions. If you're up against certain things, you're going to just lose. But this is a stealth capping fleet. If you're up against anything that can outfight it while being really fast and mobile, you're screwed, basically. So this is basically just for taking a whole bunch of different capture points. Now, I really dislike the Cartouche. If I could choose a better ship for the price points, I definitely would. But this thing just has no offensive capability. I've had all 6 of these whaling on light ships there, and they could not kill anything. They can't even kill Corsair Eldar ships that are at close range that I've managed to knock the shields off of. It just takes so long to kill anything with these guys. Their damage output is so low. So these things are only here for trying to capture points and for trying to wear down your opponent's engines with engine criticals if you can get those. That's pretty much all they're good for here. They're capable of keeping their distance and firing with that Gauss particle whip turret, and if you can get all 6 shots, that's a pretty decent chance that one of them is going to be a crit. So that's kind of what's going on there. The Shroud is to keep the Admiral sort of more safe, keep him out of the fight there, and also so that he can sort of see things coming from a little bit further away thanks to that sensor attribute. Jackal's just round out points there, but basically what we want to do is get all our cartouches out on different capture points, go around in circles, capture as much stuff as we can, figure out where our opponent's going, and if we can isolate an enemy ship there and just jump our entire fleet on top of it, that also is something that we want to do. So let's try and get into a match here. Now, I don't actually recommend this playstyle necessarily. It's a pretty obnoxious way to play the game, but it is an effective way to play the game as well, and I think that being able to go for the stealth capture point mechanic is a real indicator that the Necrons are a little bit more, I think, versatile than you would potentially give them credit for. since I think to a certain degree a lot of people just play them as a big solid lump of metal that advances towards their enemy and blasts them away. And it's a strategy that works against some things and really fails against others. That's the same thing here. This strategy works against some things and really fails against others. Ever since all those Pulsar buffs, like, if you're up against Eldar, this just loses. But again, I don't think I've found a great solution to Eldar for the Necrons, period. Mass Recall, if you've got, like, a Karen and some other ships of that sort, can actually work really well against Eldar, but it's pretty tricky to do. Basically, you have to get, like, a Shroud or something like that right up next to the entire Eldar fleet there. You have to then Mass Recall your fleet on top of the thing. He tries to run away, and then you can sort of micro warp jump everything on top of him. Actually, you micro warp jump your admiral on top of their fleet. That's even a little bit better, because then you can sort of jump them all on top of their fleet with just the with just the mass recall. And if he tries to run away, then you can use inertialess drive and keep up with him. It's a pretty interesting strategy, but it's sort of mitigated by the fact that he could he could just turn around and beat you up if he's the right kind of Eldar fleet, because your damage output is pretty low. Alright, let's see if we can't get an actual match. It's been a bit buggy for me today. I don't know. Like, the reason this bug is going as it is that I think someone mixed up a value, and Mass Recall is set to the level 10 ability, and Arc Propagator is set to the level 9 ability for the in-battle selection screens. So basically, you kind of have one or the other, and you can kind of get both. It's weird. I don't know. Not even showing me that waiting for players thing here. Cannot take control of enemy drifting Hulk. That would actually be amazing if you could do that. So yeah, we're up against the Imperial Navy. This is one of those ones where it really shows like the power of this particular fleet, because normally the Imperial Navy just outbrawls you in a humongous manner. If you've got a Karen and he just manages to get like 4 or 5 ships just ramming into it, you've probably lost it already. It's just not even by a little bit. It's just easy to destroy Karens with ramming with the Imperial Navy nowadays, and also their torpedoes. So yeah, like if I check here, it says I can take the Arc Propagator. Each particle whip hit spreads to the closest enemy target within 4,500, and yeah, so not useful here since we don't have the right kind of ship there. Oops, this should be 5. Because like if you check our ship, this guy's got 0 particle whips. All right, we're gonna have our admiral sort of loitering around here. Yeah, that should be fine. 3. Not necessarily sure how I want to go about some of this, but this map's kind of funky. I think we keep our admiral safe here, actually, and don't engage him on anything. And I'll have this little guy over here getting ready to back cap stuff here. So I want to draw him to, I think, the right, actually, and if I do that, I actually want my admiral on the left, since once we've drawn him over there, I can start capping stuff around the backside. Alright. Oops. Alright, so already screwing up my orders here, but whatever. My opponent's also gone for like a stealth cap build, which is kind of interesting. It's not very common for like Imperial Navy to do that, but they can definitely do it. Yeah. So one of the problems that I've got with this particular type of stealth fight is that like he's actually capable of beating me in ship-to-ship fights here. So what I have to do is make sure that I'm just swarming over him with my capital, basically. I've also got better vision than him, though, to a certain degree. He's probably got more escorts, though. Alright, so there's one of his ships there. that's just an escort, though. These are just escorts as well. Escorts and escorts. I think he might be trying to swing something around this way. I'm going to get my admiral out of here. Just a bad feeling about that whole situation. Let's just focus this little guy here, I think. Maybe not. Oh, shit. There is some stuff over there. Are those Defiants? I think those might be Defiants. My frigate got destroyed. Jeez. That's not good. Where did those frigates go? Well, either way, we've got 3 of the capture points. Got a mutiny over there. That's interesting, but not that useful. And all I have to do is hang on to the 3 points we have. I don't really need to press for any more. There we go. All right. Oh, that's not good. Okay. Uh-oh. Okay. I actually want these guys to head up this way. All right. Alright, got that guy. And you can sort of see what we're trying for here. I'm going to actually head over this way. So anyway, yeah, let's just keep on our points here. Can actually send this guy up this way. Get our admiral up onto this. Oh, there is some stuff. Oh, that's not good. Just want to destroy that bomber there, because that'll... Uh-oh. There we go. I'm going to send these guys up this way, recap this thing. And, yeah, like, I don't really recommend this style of gameplay, if I'm totally honest with you. It's pretty obnoxious, but, you know. One of the sort of nice things about this situation is that, like, if my ships can repair themselves in a way that his can't, like, in a very, very powerful way. So it's possible for me to get back, like, a lot of stuff that he wants me to not get back. So let's get some fighters here. We want to destroy all their bombers. If we can destroy all their bombers, he's not going to be able to deal any damage to us either, so... I'm not dealing any damage to him, really, but... Alright. Why are these bombers coming out here and doing this? It's very peculiar. That's interesting. Okay. Are these... like, is he just flinging out bombers at this point in time because he's out of fighters? That might be the case. I'm going to actually do it like this here. Because we want to actually get a couple criticals against him. If we can. Uh-oh. I don't think I wanted to necessarily do that, but oh well. This is what I started saying about these ships being incredibly weak, though. Like, even though we've got them sort of dead to rights in a sort of way here, we're not doing very much damage. Alright. Oops, this guy needs to get out of there. I think my opponent quit. I was barely getting ahead on that points thing, but yeah, like, these things just don't do damage. It's easier for me to sort of like come in and converge on a small number of his ships in a way that he can't, is essentially the moral of the story. Like, if he wants to, what he can try to do is get in and get in a fight with my ships there. And if he does that, I just mass recall away, and that was what kept happening. But whenever he tried to actually split off and try and capture all those points there, that's when he sort of can commit to destroying one or two of his ships there. I just wish that it was a little bit faster, because like the cartouches are so bad. Like, I'll probably try it with a different fleet composition, but it's hard to figure out what would actually work better, because like a lot of the Necron ships have that sort of problem of low damage per second for their cost. So you kind of have to focus fire with out regards to like stealth or hiding or anything like that. But under normal circumstances, it's kind of tricky. But anyway, that's a look at an alternate way of playing Necrons. I'm not necessarily sure I say that I like it, but it's been pretty effective for me. Other than those games where I don't end up with mass recall for whatever the hell reason. Anyway, I hope you found this video enjoyable, and of course, as always, hope to see you guys all next time.